talking about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This is actually our second attempt at this. Just like what happened with Spider-Man 3, it's almost like the universe is trying to give us a sign. It's like deliberately getting in the way of us finishing the bad Spider-Man movies. But let's hope that that doesn't happen this time. Same routine as usual. We're gonna prompt from when we begin the movie, and if you'd like to watch along with us, then you can start whichever device you have the film on when we say three. If not, you can just listen, and we'll get into the bizarre creature that is this film. So if you're ready, we can go on three.
All right.
All right, the one, two, three. And so something that I didn't mention last time, and that is like a really dumb, stupid thing, is it me or is like the time that we spend on the Sony and Columbia logos getting longer with each successive movie?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's just you, man.
Yeah, I figured. But yeah, the we talked a little bit about our first experiences seeing this movie in theaters, or rather yours, because I don't think I actually ended up seeing this one in theaters. I think this might be the only Spider-Man movie that I straight up just skipped in theaters. Then again,
Was it really just because of like the fan reaction and the backlash to this movie, or you just couldn't find the time, or you weren't willing to find the time to make it out to the theater to see this?
I want to say leaning more toward the second one. Like usually I'm not someone who will let like even the worst fan reaction stop me from seeing something if I'm already interested in it. It might have just been that none of the ads appealed to me. I don't know, like
Which
again,
is crazy because this is definitely the most overmarketed Spider-Man film ever made.
yeah, like it was inescapable, but nothing about it necessarily grabbed me. And again, I'm someone who went into Batman v Superman with the highest hopes possible, even despite the fan reaction for that one already being like an atomic bomb, basically. But yeah, I can't really much say that I regret not seeing this in theaters.
I mean, maybe this is more about me just being a fan than about critical critical thinking, I guess. But it's a Spider-Man movie. That was enough to get me in the theater at least once.
That's fair. And like something I want to get off the right immediately is that I don't think this is like a terrible movie. Like I'm not. We're gonna point out a lot of problems, but people who are like, "Oh, this movie is unsalvageable garbage," or like, "There's nothing good in it," or like, "It's one of the worst superhero movies ever." I hear people genuinely say that. I'm not gonna go that far. Like, I am in a place now where I think this and number three are the bad Spider-Man movies. But
Well, yeah,
I'm not gonna act like there's nothing redeemable about them or like they don't have their moments of strength.
as we talked about before, I hate this.
Yeah, this prologue. It's so ironic that I say that. Meanwhile, this whole prologue is really dumb and bad. And also, it's occurring to me that maybe the score for this movie is a bit confused because that whole like little motif that was playing uh over Peter's dad doing all that stuff and like them getting on this plane, that motif will then be folded into the electro theme, and I don't think that means anything. I think they're just reusing motifs for no reason.
Okay, so in Main 616, I believe his parents are believe are like shield agents. Is revealed that they're shield agents,
Yes.
which I think is dumb, and they didn't have the rights to do it anyway. So I'm glad it's not here. Um, but they so Peter's dad in the Ultimate Comics is very tied in heavily with Venom. And his dad essentially creates what ends up being Venom in Brian Michael Bendis' run. So maybe that would have been cooler if we were eventually building to like a better version of them. And to be fair, there's not a lot to Ultimate Venom, but they could have retooled some of that stuff and mixed in Bendis' work, classic 616, and made that work better. But yeah, they just don't have a really compelling idea for what to do with Peter's dad and why he left.
Which
It's all very generic and surface, and
which you get
just not.
you get the sense that maybe the part of that is like we set up his parents and his dad as sort of a mystery in number one, and so you get the sense.
And we didn't have a compelling idea for what to do with that mystery when we made the first movie,
Yeah, and
which I contend is still a huge problem when you're making a series of movies and you know you're going to get sequels. Much like with the current Star Wars films, like there was obviously talk that JJ knew where he was going, but he just decided to toss over the baton to a director and let him do whatever and not follow up on anything he was building on in a sensible way with Last Jedi.
Let's not risk making any response to this video a Last Jedi thing. That said, J.J. Abrams has come out and straight up said that no, Rian Johnson did not deviate from his plan in any significant way. Like, he and Rian Johnson did consistently communicate, and he had no problem with any choices Rian made, so that rumor is, like, debunked by JJ himself. That said, I think the bigger problem in regards to this movie is sort of the exact opposite of what you're saying, which is I don't think just because you've got, like, a series of movies planned, you get the sense that because they knew they were making a sequel, they felt like obligated to address all this parent stuff. I don't think it should have been an obligation. You can make like a sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man that doesn't have to follow up on this immediately. If you don't have an idea and you want to make a movie or you're contractually obligated to make a movie, just make a movie. Like the mystery can wait for a bit until you have a sense of where to go. It's not
But
like making stuff up on the fly is not ideal, but it's also not like a criminal sin. Like that used to be just how we made sequels. Like
But
if
my
you
argument
don't
against
have
that is they were going out of the way to try to justify redoing the origin story when they made the reboot in the first place. And so to put the parents in just for the sake of having something that wasn't in Raimi's trilogy, when you have no real sense of what you're going to do with that, I feel is hollow and disingenuous.
that's a problem. But that's a problem with the first movie. In regards to this movie, I don't think you should go in with the sense that like we have to address the parents because we set them up last time. If you don't have anything, wait until you have something to do that. Otherwise, what you come up with is going to be real shoddy and real rushed and feel like you made it up on the fly.
Or better yet, don't do that at all.
Yeah, probably. But,
as I said before, the swinging here is incredible.
Yep, I was going to say our first big positive. Really, all of the Spider-Man, like, physicality and just swinging around and action stuff, I think, is some of its best in this movie. Not so best is this kind of stuff. But like I mentioned earlier, that stuff like Rhino being a total cartoon character and Electro being a total cartoon character, that does not fit with the world of the last movie.
It really doesn't.
But
we're in a Saturday morning cartoon here, and that's not what the last movie was.
And
it's
yet,
a really jarring tonal shift.
Yeah, it's jarring, especially coming right off of the last movie. But like, tonally, aesthetically, we are very much committing to a different sort of feel with this one. So they make sense in this movie. And like, I don't have a problem with the Spider-Man movie where sometimes like your bad guys can just be goofy cartoon characters. Like Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery lends itself to being very fun, even without necessarily always doing the like depth and pathos thing. Like that would be my preference. I'm
But the problem is your main villain, if you're trying to tell a real story, should be that. And you can have the dumb or slapstick kind of villains for just an introduction scene, like us to just see him take out a villain, and then we can get into the actual story.
although I would say that you could do Spider-Man or any superhero, but Spider-Man especially, where the story is not necessarily villain focused. Like the villain can have a presence, but they needn't always be where the dramatic narrative is like hinged on. It's just sort of the route that we've taken with superhero movies in general. That said, I don't think this movie knows who its main villain is.
Uh, I would say that the main villain is ostensibly Electro until we take him out and decide we want to have. Um, and I feel like Green Goblin is less a villain and more the contrivance for Gwen's death, and we need that to be him because he's the one that does it in the comics.
True, but I mean, by that logic, I feel like if Electro is the main villain, it's only by sort of process of elimination. Like, he doesn't really feel like a main villain, he's just the closest, I guess. Like, there are large chunks of the movie where he's a non factor, and
But we're
he's not
spending more
really.
time with him than we are any of the other villains in this movie.
Yeah, but again, that's only by comparison. Like, compare him to any of the villains in the other Spider Man movies, and he's still just not. But again, I like all this stuff. This is really fun.
Yeah, this could be a scene right out of Spectacular.
It feels to me like it could be like a playable sequence out of PS4. The editing is starting to be a little bit I don't know if we need to cut to Rhino's mugging for like a split second as constantly as we're doing.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
And again, the ringtone thing, I don't really see it as a problem. I appreciate fun nods.
Yeah, me either. I can imagine it just being one of those things that like sticks in your craw if you're like, okay, well, where did that come from in this universe? Like that first in Broadway, second in Broadway, third in Broadway. Yeah, so we've talked about the whole seeing Captain Stacy thing and whether or not that works.
I think it works fine, at least here. It's certainly a thing that I feel bothers you a lot more than it does me.
It bothers me less here than it does in a lot of other stuff that do the like seeing dead people thing. Here it doesn't. My main problem here is just that it lingers on it too much. Like if Peter like turns around and sees Captain Stacy and then he like blinks and he's like, no, 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 that's not who that is, or he's not really dead. I'm like, fine. I can buy that, but like he spends like 20, 30 seconds at a time staring at him and he's just like staring back. I'm like, I can buy that as that's
I mean,
just
I
for
think
the audience.
that works. I think it should linger, personally.
Yeah, I buy it as it's just for the audience, visual shorthand for what's going on in Peter's head and not necessarily something he's seeing visually. But just like
Gwen's speech here is really on the nose.
I know, right? It's so like can you tell who's going to die at the end of this movie?
Ugh, super cool. One of my favorite shots in the whole movie.
Yeah, this is really nice.
This is the thematics of our movie.
Yeah.
This is what you're gonna take from this movie, kids.
And like we were being on the nose about it from the very beginning. Like the first shot is zooming out of the gears of Richard's watch.
Yeah, time is very important in this movie.
Although, not a bad motif to make the center of your Spider-Man movie since his whole thing is trying and failing at time management.
No, we didn't have to be as um, we didn't have to be as deliberate about it. Like we can't give our audience any kind of credit to just pick up on that.
And like it's mostly fine if you get rid of that speech. Like I can't think of anything else in the movie that's that like hammering it in.
It feels like the ending of the last movie on steroids,
Meh.
where we have Uncle Ben's voice recording that we're listening to.
Yeah. There he is.
This is I love this.
This is such a flex. On May's face.
And I buy that as something this Peter would do.
Especially like coming off the adrenaline of just having caught somebody.
And I like that this Peter banters a lot, even out of costume.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, he doesn't he doesn't necessarily feel like exactly the same guy in and out of costume.
Yeah.
Do you think that Ralph Waldo Emerson thing is like a roundabout reference to the fact that Uncle Ben didn't make up the with great power comes great responsibility thing?
I don't know.
Like Aunt May thinks Ben made up this quote when really it was someone else, and that's what everyone thinks about the Voltaire quote.
As we talked about before, Flash used to be in this scene, but they cut it.
It would have been nice to see that. At the same time, if it was only this scene, I can see why you'd get rid of it. Like if you were gonna bring Flash back, I'd want him to be in a consistent part like he was last time.
And that is always the tricky thing when you're making something that's supposed to be more serialized, like a TV show, in film format, where if you're going to give them a supporting cast, they need to matter, but you're also telling his story.
Yeah. And like you can't just once you've introduced someone as a supporting character, it feels kind of weird once they're gone, even if they're coming back later. Like my thing right now is Thor, where like we haven't seen the supporting cast of the first two Thor movies in years, and now they're
And
all.
that's because in Ragnarok, Taika just decided to completely kill most of them off.
I'm talking about like Jane and Darcy and stuff, where we just write them
Well,
out because they're not relevant to that story, and that makes total sense and is a completely right decision. And yet now they're going to come back, and it feels weird that they kind of like weren't there for that since we're not just ignoring them, you know?
well, I don't have a problem with ignoring Darcy because she's one of the most obnoxious characters in the MCU, and I hate her with a burning passion. But
I totally understand that, but just like we're not ignoring her. She's coming back for WandaVision, and it feels weird because it's been so long, you know?
yeah, but this scene's kind of unfortunate because as we talked about before, this movie is running with a not so great ending because we have Peter kind of contradicting himself.
Yeah.
Like he decides to go along with his what at least what his interpretation of what Captain Stacy said to him was, and then at the very end he's like, "Yeah, well, the secrets that you can't keep are the best kind," and you're like, "What?" And then you get to this movie and he's decided, I'm not going to be good anymore. This is disrespectful to her father who made this dying wish, and I just can't handle it. And
Do you think it maybe has something to do with people reacting really badly to that line at the end of the last movie, and they were like, "All right, we're just gonna have we're the whole movie is gonna completely walk back on that thing,
yeah,
and we're gonna."
it feels like they didn't have a clear direction of where they were going with really anything coming out of the ending of the last movie.
I don't even know so much if they didn't have a clear direction because I recall before this came out, people who disliked Amazing and disliked Peter's character in that movie really, really got on that last line. And so I could see being someone working on this movie and thinking like, okay, people are mad at us for that. We can't like follow through on that. We have to walk back a little bit.
It feels like as Dan Torrey said in one of the videos he did with Cap, it feels like movie making in a laboratory where it's like, okay, because of audience reaction and the fact that not everyone was on board with Captain Marvel, she's not really in that much of Endgame.
I
And
can see
and
that.
to be fair, that feels more rumory to me. I never saw like an actual confirmation of that, but
That feels like
there
complete.
was talk that because like not everyone loved Captain Marvel, they decided to scale back her scenes in Endgame even further.
That I don't put a single ounce of stock into that. That to me has always struck me as completely baseless, made up nonsense by people who dislike Captain Marvel and just want that to be true. I've seen literally nothing to suggest that that's even remotely close to what happened. I think what we got in Captain Marvel in Endgame is exactly what was always planned, and people just really, the ones who really dislike Captain Marvel, really like to peddle that conspiracy. This scene is great, though.
I love this scene. Seeing Spider-Man like inspire little kids, like
And really, this whole montage, because it's good, again, like PS4, to give us a sense of one Spidey interacting with people in the day to day and seeing like more than most superheroes, Spider-Man is like really a community hero. It really sets the tone of like not everyone is down with Spider-Man with these interviews and stuff. Gives you the sense that he's like a little bit of a controversial figure, and yet also it really roots him in the setting where it's very like New York, like this kind of thing. This is very Times Square sort of gathering and imagery, and he fits right in.
yeah, some people like him, some people don't.
And again, setting up Electro's delusions. I'm Spider-Man. Yeah, this montage is really fun.
And we talked about this. I don't really care to call this well, given information that we have later, retroactively this feels like a stalking scene, but
Yeah, the way it's
I have less of an issue with it because Gwen doesn't really have an issue with it.
yeah. The
And
issue, if it exists, is again just make up your mind about what you want to do, like the writers. And again, we've got the same thing of like that's I
and it's
wish.
not like any supervillains at this point know who he is, or even common criminals know who he is. So this idea of like I've just been checking in on you doesn't really work. Like why would she be in danger when she's no longer in a relationship with you? I think
Uh,
I think it would be better if they played it as like he wants to go back and ask her back out and be like, I'm sorry I screwed up. But every time he just can't bring himself to.
I don't take I don't take his line about checking in on her necessarily to be about like whether or not she's in danger. I think it
Then
just
what does
means
that even really mean? Why would he
checking
need
in
to
on
do that?
someone. You
Huh?
know, you check in on someone sometimes just to see if they're okay. That doesn't always necessarily mean supervillain. It just means, you're right.
But that I don't know. I don't. That still doesn't feel necessary to me.
No, none of it feels necessary.
Or that Peter would even feel necessary like that's necessary. Like pick up the phone and call her. I can see if like you're swinging around and then you see her going to a cafe and you're like, should I try to win her back? I don't know. And then you see the burning building and he has to go and
Yeah.
deal with that. I think that works better.
Yeah, and see, again, a lot of it is we don't have much information. Like the way that previous bit was edited, it's like that could have been exactly what happened. He could have just like
Yeah,
spotted her and just stopped for a second, but we don't know.
but but retroactively, when we get the scene later where they're talking, um, he's like, "Yeah, I've been following you a couple days."
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it's just, and this I don't like anything about Electro at all. And this is kind of the main reason I was dreading doing this particular commentary
Yeah.
because I don't have much to say about Electro. I just don't care for this villain on any level.
Okay.
I feel like Jamie Foxx is trying to do. He's really excited about just being a villain in a Spider-Man movie, so he's trying to give it his all. But on paper, it just does not work.
I, again, keeping with the premise that I'm okay with a goofier, less like immediately sympathetic or pathological villain in one of these movies. I think the problem with Max is not necessarily these early scenes. Like this whole Edward Nigma in Batman Forever before he turns into the Riddler thing. Like this, I don't like these scenes either. And I think the movie is either way confused about what it's trying to say with him and what exactly like his mentality is, and that's not entirely consistent. But that said, all the like groundwork scenes with him could be made all right if the payoff was better. I think once he becomes Electro, the payoff there is so consistently like weak that it retroactively takes what could have been all right seeds and just like makes them not all right.
This is such a funny scene.
It is funny, and yet at the same time, it's it's a little bit weird that Peter's this bad at making excuses for himself. Just because this Peter is mostly pretty all right with the secret identity thing, outside of these conversations with Aunt May, which seems like they're stretching a little bit for the comedy.
Um, yeah, that's kind of a problem we've had a lot of a lot of Spider-Man on screen recently. But like in the Ultimate Comics, he's also not particularly good at it, at least with Aunt May,
Mm.
because Aunt May, of course, is smart and someone who covers all her bases. And so
And also,
when people be like, "I was over here," and then she's like, "No, I already called there," and she's like, "Well, why? I was over here." And she's like, "Yeah, I called them too. Like, I call all these places. Like, just be straight up with me."
and of course, they live together, so it makes sense that it would be more difficult to hide things from her.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's just Aunt May's not an idiot, and
Mm.
so like Peter doesn't have a lot of wiggle room to come up with these lies. Uh,
Yeah, I get the sense that we see stuff like that just to establish that he has the capacity for violence. But I don't know if that was worth sort of like the weird wrinkle that continues to add to his character. It's like what exactly?
yeah,
Like I always get wary when I talk about characters who are just supposed to be like sick in the head like this, because you're not always sure you want to ask like what is their condition, because outright confirming anything could be kind of problematic. But just like, well, what exactly does he have going on? He's got maybe like one too many things. Like he's delusional. He like literally sees like physical delusions until he's like snapped out of it, like he gets lost in his own head at the drop of a hat. He's he's super lonely, and like all of those things do work together. It's just I don't know, he comes off as way too much of a caricature, and I'm just wondering, what is his deal? Like, actually, what is wrong with him?
And I don't think the movie is interested in delving into that because they can conveniently avoid giving him any kind of specific psychosis. Like we don't know if he actually has like a multiple personality disorder or
Yeah,
any
like,
kind of tangible real world mental deficiency.
and again,
Because
I can totally understand why you wouldn't, because you don't want to do
you don't
the,
want your hero just beating up on someone like who has those issues.
and you don't want to risk, even like if you name it, still not going far enough and doing the ever problematic thing, which is, oh, if you have a mental illness like this, then you should watch out. Like, you don't want to do that, and that's inherent to a lot of like crazy person villains in movies. It's like it creates a really bad stigma around actual psychoses. So I can see wanting to avoid that, but the, I don't know.
Then
Like
why
you,
make Electro a crazy person to begin with?
yeah, but like you don't have to label it with a real world psychosis just to say that he's delusional. Like, I think last time I brought up like the character of Invader Zim, and that's another thing where, again, set in a world far, far more like over the top and less grounded than this one, but you can still make it work. Where it's like he doesn't have a psychosis; he's just generically crazy, and yet we're consistent with it. And like
I
we,
like Dane DeHaan a lot as Harry. I think he's perfectly cast, as I stated earlier or
yep,
before,
mm-hmm.
in the commentary no one here. And I'll also say, yet again, that this is by far the most blasphemous and infuriating missed opportunity in the whole movie. So you have Osborn as this mysterious figure in the first movie that we don't ever get to see. And then for the second film, you decide to kill him off in his first scene.
And see, now I'm even more convinced of the mentality that went into this one, where it's like I've I'm now convinced that the idea going in was, we set up Peter's parents in the first movie, we have to address them here. We set up Norman in the first movie, we have to address him here. Even if we don't actually have an idea of what we want to do with Norman, who cares? We can just have him for a scene. He has to be addressed because we set him up last time. I think,
Or maybe the idea is we're being subversive because we're killing off a character that's supposed to be like a big villain and a major threat, like in the source material. Wouldn't it be so subversive that we just killed him off without doing anything with him? Ooh.
I very much doubt that that's it, given that no one talks about it like that. And also, if that were the case, they still wouldn't do it in his first scene. Or if they would, it wouldn't just be him lying on a bed, like succumbing to an illness and nothing special. Like, if they were doing it to be subversive, they would have it be like a big in your face, you didn't see this coming. We killed Norman Osborn. No, it's just like, we established he was sick in the last movie. Now here he is sick and he dies of the sickness. And I think the thing is, like, they feel like they have to tie up the loose ends of number one when there was really nothing obligating them to do that. If you don't have an idea for what to do with Norman Osborn, just have him in this scene and then keep him alive for later.
And
Or,
maybe I'm just so fixated on this because like Spider-Man is inherently a serialized thing, and this isn't the Raimi situation where they know that they are in fact getting more sequels and that they're going to be able to like make a franchise with multiple movies. So why not have a writer's room and just, like write it out, like have a clear destination of where you're going with characters.
oh no, wait, forget it. We're both totally wrong. Neither of us are right. Because if you recall, they did have plans for Norman to still be alive via his severed head being in like a lab somewhere still alive.
I remember that. Yeah,
So
that was a
assuming so
great
assuming that that
idea.
assuming that that's like part of the plan, like into the shooting of this movie, then it's neither of what we're talking about. Something just got cut that now leads to this being Norman's last scene. That said, I do like having dead father figures be the thing that like brings Harry and Peter together, even if, again, byproduct of all these decisions, what we're going to do with that relationship is ultimately going to be really rushed. But when we get the two of them together in just a bit, they do have genuine chemistry, and I do buy that friendship. So
Yeah, they have stellar chemistry.
yeah, so at least something positive came out of it. But again, that's
Is
the
Gwen
big.
still well? I imagine because it was just Connors, like that was an isolated thing, and for whatever reason, the Indian guy pushing Connors to push out that lizard formula as quickly as possible is conspicuously not here. But part of me wonders why she's even still working at this company after that.
True. Well, I mean, it's a lucrative business, I guess.
Yeah, just for the
Although
paycheck.
that said, that's another case of deleted scenes not like solving problems where they wouldn't have otherwise, because that Indian guy actually died in a deleted scene of the first movie. And with that
Of
scene
course.
taken out, it raises the question of where did he go? But nope, I guess we're just supposed to believe anyway that he's dead.
Yeah, it's so awkward, and I hate that. I saw the extended cut from Far From Home, and not to talk too much about another movie while we're talking about this, but that does fix one of my major issues with the beginning of that first movie, with the beginning of that movie.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of the deleted scenes that will quickly strip away from a lot of these superhero films would actually help them breathe more and give you stuff that you arguably need, like that Indian guy dying.
Yeah. Like there's at least two deleted scenes in Avengers Endgame that I would have kept, and one scene in Captain Marvel that I can't believe they got rid of. But those are discussions for other times. And here we have the most ridiculous thing in this movie. It's
The electricity somehow bridging the gap in his teeth.
not even just that, this whole thing. Like, he happens to get shocked and falls into a thing of electric eels, and it fixes his teeth, and he does, like, this is, again, clearly we are in a much more heightened world than the first movie. But even then, like, getting zapped and then falling into a pool of experimental electric eels, turning you into an incorporeal electricity monster, I don't buy it.
I mean, well, we did that in Spectacular, and we did that. We've done that in a number of places in the comics where he falls into a tank, or a tank of electric eels shocks him, and then that's how he gets his electric
Yeah, but
powers.
again, even those compare, like, I buy those more in those worlds compared to this one. And then maybe that's just the fact that this is a sequel to a much more grounded movie, and I can't subconsciously let go of that, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, this movie more or less throws that out the window. I think
It does.
from the very beginning.
It does, definitely, but I still, just because so much of it is built on the last movie, I can't completely separate it. I like this, though.
And grounded is not inherently the same thing as realistic. And I think we often conflate what those actually mean. Like, I would say, like, we look at the Nolan Batman films, right? And we all call those like darker, more like grounded takes on like the whole superhero thing. We're not even having any kind of superhuman related stuff going on in those movies. So I'd say that's less quote unquote grounded and more realistic because you don't have to work to have the audience really just believe that much because they're looking at things that could still tangibly happen as opposed to a guy shooting webs and swinging around and sticking to walls.
I don't know. I feel like that's a very particular example, and as a general rule, I don't think there's all that much to be differentiated between the two. That said, we talked over the whole Felicia thing and how
It's so weird to put her in Oscorp in this position, and again, do nothing with her. She's just here, and we don't have her. There's no like mention or not to her being Black Cat, or she's not here to try to steal anything from the company, or it's just
Yeah.
this feels like a really lazy and conflated movie that has no idea what it wants to do.
And like the thing is, you mentioned this, it feels like what so many other people complain about other comic book movies feeling like, particularly the Marvel movies, where they're like, oh, they all feel like advertisements for the next movie. Like, I just want to watch a single movie and not have to, like, sit through setups for other films. And it's like, no, really, none of those movies are that. Even Iron Man 2, which comes the closest, is still a self-contained narrative, and all of the stuff that's building the future movies is either mostly low-key or saved for the end credits. This is not that. This is the movie that everyone thinks they're talking about when they talk about like just advertisements for other movies. We will multiple times like set time aside within the story of this film just to be like, oh, this cool thing that might become a thing in the next movie. And Felicia is that. She has no reason to be here other than she might become a thing later.
Yeah,
That said, like we said, these two scenes, pretty cool.
yeah, and like the scenes where these two are just like together catching up, some of the best scenes in the whole movie.
Hmm.
Just these two talking. Yeah, right here, this whole conversation. And I like Andrew's demeanor in this scene. And I like that we'll see it in a second here when he climbs over the railing.
I love that like the whole model thing is so exhausting. It's like I know. Like these two are great together.
Yeah, this moment we're about to get right here is just a really cool, subtle moment of improv from Andrew, where it's like he climbs over this railing. That doesn't feel like a particularly natural thing to do, but like he's Spider Man, and like he's not really worried. He's not really thinking about um like being. He can just like let loose with this guy.
Yeah, and
And genuine friend from his past he hasn't seen in a long time.
but the thing is, he's Spider-Man, but at the same time, he makes climbing over that railing not feel like the easiest thing in the world, and you get
Yeah,
the sense that that's a conscious choice.
and the talk that they have later while they're right here where they're throwing pebbles against the rocks.
Hmm.
He's like, yeah, it could be a girl or a woman. We don't know for
We don't
sure.
know.
And yeah, I do like that they both bond over the issues with their respective parents.
Yeah, not even just that they're gone, like that they both of their dads left them with this really precarious situation that they don't know how to deal with.
Sins of the father,
Hmm.
which is kind of an interesting way to go. I mean, I don't like the whole destiny thing and the fact that like Peter being bitten by the spiders, the way it's talked about it, like it really couldn't have happened with any other person.
Yeah, this because this is where they introduced that whole DNA thing, right?
I believe so. Yeah, like in the scene where he's where his dad like reveals everything to him when he's in that like underground like bunker or whatever. He explains that the spiders are coded to his DNA, so only Peter would have been able to get powers from them, presumably.
Yeah, and like that may or may not have been the intent, but either way, the whole thing of like this could only have happened to Peter is just like that really compounds on the whole destiny thing, and it really diminishes Spider-Man's kind of like everyman appeal a little bit. Like that does still come out in Peter as a character, but that's just a really weird story choice. That said, with Harry's line about like I just wish that I had time for eventually, I like that we like hold on Peter reacting to that. What I don't like is the fact that he thinks that in the first place because, as we forgot to mention, his dad is like, "Oh, you've got the sickness, and I got it at your age, and somehow I managed to live this long, but you're totally gonna die in like a month or whatever." And Harry acts like he has like 10 days to live through this whole movie, despite the fact that his dad lived that long, and he's got his dad's resources.
Yeah.
So, what exactly is the big rush? What's the problem? And like,
He
we're
should
trying,
presumably be able to prolong his life just as long as Norman did.
yeah, and like, if not way longer. We're trying to tie it into like the time thing of like Harry doesn't think he has time, but that doesn't. There's no reason for him to feel that way. Yes. More than the other movies, I feel like all of the good things about this one are mostly self-contained, like scenes that really work, and all
Yeah, like character moments like the Peter and Harry scene.
yeah, and all the bad stuff is like pervasive story issues.
Mm-hmm. And this is the scene we were talking about earlier where he eventually reveals that he more or less has been stalking her.
Yeah,
Which again, I'm not in love with offending, but I don't really have an issue with it because she doesn't.
yeah. That thing with the car is not entirely necessary, though. You could have just waited for the light to change, Peter. There's no reason to jaywalk.
It's like he wants to get to her as soon as possible, and it's more dramatic and funny if he just doesn't wait.
True.
I can't remember if they're still together during the filming of this movie or not, but like
Uh,
they're
during during the filming, they definitely are.
okay. Because like yeah, their chemistry is just as palpable and strong as it is in the first movie.
Hmm. Yeah, I want to say it's after this movie comes out, like a little bit, maybe a couple months or a year afterward that they split up. Yeah, but this stuff is really charming. I know some people who don't care for it, and I just gotta say I feel bad for them. Like if this stuff doesn't work for you, then this whole movie is shot pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know what you could possibly be enjoying if you're not enjoying the character moments. I mean, I guess aside from the action's fine mostly. It feels like Mark Webb was like, okay, just improv, just go. You two got it. We don't even need a script because you guys are that good. And here we go with more Electro stuff. I kind of part of me really wonders why you would pick Electro for a whole movie because I don't feel like I had Vulture too, but he's not. He's just not. He's never been a super compelling character to me. I'm just not sure what I can say about this scene that hasn't already been said. Ponder dropped out for a minute there, but he's back.
Yeah, that was technical difficulties. Although, I saw the good scene. Okay, you know what? I'm not gonna. I don't want to be mean because this first bit with Electro actually isn't that bad. I think the whole thing
What
where
do you mean this first bit?
I mean, like this first sort of like the encounter that they're gonna have coming up, where like
Okay,
Peter
because we're
tries.
still on this Peter and Gwen scene.
Yeah, but I mean, like when Electro becomes a thing, and like I'll talk about it when we get there. But I think that scene is mostly pretty good. And
I don't have that thing that you had, at
it's
least when you
not.
reviewed this movie, where you talked about how it doesn't make sense for Peter to just fight him after he already tried talking him down and then he went ballistic and tried to kill a bunch of cops in Times Square.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. I think I might have forgotten the details of the scene.
And I love how we resolved that scene. That feels very Spider-Man.
Yes.
And it just reminds you that like not everyone hates him. Like there are people, even people in law enforcement that like have his back.
Yeah.
There is that gray area. Jameson, of course, is the big factor that wants everyone to hate him.
Who
But
is
realistically, that's just not how it would be.
who is only an email cameo in this movie.
Yeah, that we already talked over. How do you feel about the score and the whispering and the chanting of like his voice in his head?
I'm torn on it. Like there I know a lot of people who think it's like the most cringy, ridiculous choice that you can make. And then there's other people like Cap who think that it's a pretty inspired move. I'm caught somewhere in the middle. I like Electro's theme. I don't think we've had a Spider-Man movie yet, minus the previous film, that hasn't had at least one really cool villain theme. But I don't know. I think it works more on its own than in the context of the movie, if that makes any sense. Like hearing it in a scene, I can totally see why you would think that's a little bit too far and a little too silly. But listening to it by itself, I think it sounds nice. Assuming that you're into dubstep, which not everyone is.
I mean, I am, but I mean, even if I wasn't, if it works in context of the movie, I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah. Like I personally like the choice of like doing his narration in music form. I think more movies would feel a little bit braver and a little bit more, I don't know, like meaty in terms of getting us to understand the characters if they just went all the way and did internal monologue, and it especially works in a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, music is kind of an interesting device if you use it as one. Um, the Guardians movies, more so the first one, handle the music very, very well. And
Yeah,
then you get stuff like Suicide Squad that was just trying to copy that. And interestingly enough, there was a news article that came out like yesterday, or maybe the day before, where James Gunn talked about how he's going to be using the music in his Suicide Squad sequel very similarly, much like he did with Guardians, which is kind of funny because the first movie was more or less trying to copy his aesthetic with that, and in the second movie he's going to be doing that presumably a lot better.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Like the problem with the first Suicide Squad, the problem with the first movie was that it pretty much only did it for aesthetic reasons and didn't sort of do what we're talking about, which is using the music to actually express the feelings of the characters.
And we do a good bit of that in the Boys TV show. I noticed where it's like um, characters are like you hear music going on in a scene that kind of speak to the character. Like when Willie Butcher is fighting the Invisible Guy, Translucent. He's listening to like punk rock, which is something that that guy would listen to,
Yeah.
or Frenchie listening to French rap, which is something I never knew that I needed. This scene is good though. This feels very good. I'm going to try to talk this guy down before just getting into this fight.
Yeah, and like it's funny, but it's also it's like genuinely heroic, and it's like it's great to have a superhero not just immediately go straight to punch, and also it's like steadily, naturally escalating tension, where it's like, again, this guy's not right in the head. Peter's trying his best to like bring him down, but any wrong, you get the sense that any wrong word could like set him off. And you've got the sniper guy. He's just gonna do nothing but cause trouble.
We haven't talked about his suit yet. Um, I know we talked about it in the previous version that we tried doing of this, but I love this suit. It's tied with the black and red suit from Far From Home, my favorite cinematic suit so far.
Hmm. I think it's a really, really great suit. I'm sorry, I'm actually really into this scene. But yeah, I'm kind of torn on whether or not it's my favorite of the movie suits, just because, as far as just capturing what I like about the aesthetic of the suit in the comics, it does it the best. And yet, both of what I call like the quote unquote main two MCU suits, I also just really like for a lot of different reasons. Like just for like personal preference, that's maybe how I would like a Spidey suit to look.
And as I've said before, while we don't get him ever running out in either of these two movies, I love that we have the malfunction and that this scene revolves around that. This is so cool. And that he's
Mm-hmm.
got to think on the fly and improvise and save all these people.
And the fact that he managed to do it within that time. Also, I forgot to mention, because we're in Times Square, we've got our Disney foreshadowing with the giant Disney logo in the background of some of these shots.
Solid score here too. I like that we have a more triumphant and less kind of understated score from the first movie.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily the strongest theme, but
No,
but
I
it,
don't think it's particularly memorable, but at least I think it suits the character a little better.
and it gives you the right feeling for the scenes that it's in.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, triumphant is the right word. Like, it's not gonna stick with you, but hearing it in the moment, it does enhance the mood of the scene, so that's good. I also just like the electricity effects. Like, I like the kind of like blue mixed with purple thing that they go for.
And how like it's vein. It feels like his veins are literally alive with electricity.
Yeah.
Um,
This
I
weird
remember.
I never like realized he had like the weird electricity vision though. That's a little odd.
Um, Man, he's made of electricity. I don't know if I would call that odd, but
No, but I mean just like as a choice. Like it totally
I
makes
still don't
sense.
feel like that's particularly odd.
Maybe it's because I'm just noticing it now and I always assumed that he just like, saw normally. Bye
We saw him using
McDonald.
his vision early before he even started fighting anybody.
Man, I must have been like not been paying attention to those bits because I'm either that or I forgot, which would be on brand for me.
This is hilarious. I love this so much.
Complete with the hat. The hat really, really sells it.
Yeah.
And look at the way that he like twirled it around like he's RoboCop. Awkward. Nah.
Yeah, that was not a very good top point. There's a very weird transition that we do here that's really dumb. Like the movie shifts gears because of that fight for seemingly no real reason. Like, yeah, he wasn't able to. I don't know.
Like, what do you mean?
Okay, so after this fight with Electro, he then starts getting fixated on uh, the thing with going on with his dad. I don't really know the correlation. Why is now suddenly the time he decides to shift gears to being invested in figuring out what happened with his dad?
I don't think there is a correlation.
But it's we play that as the emphasis for him to look into the dad stuff again.
Well, like we just had him like opening up the closet and he sees it and he throws the suit over it. And like we established previously that he's sort of being consistent about deliberately trying to ignore it. And I don't know if it's just like he saw it and that's like I don't think the fight with Electro has anything to do with anything. I think that's just like how many times can he see that lying there and do nothing about it? Like the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess. And just coincidentally happens to happen after the Electro fight. I don't care much for this song, also.
I mean, I think it's weird to put it here.
Yeah.
I don't mind the song at all. I feel like it's I don't know.
Like, what are we saying with it? Like, for you, like, who is he doing this for?
I think you're. I think you're going far trying to look into the lyrics, but I feel like the feeling you're supposed to get from this song fits with a more happy-go-lucky romantic scene.
I don't even necessarily get that sense. I don't know. Like, the lyrics just feel so. It feels like they're trying to get me to read into it, you know? Like, they're really on the nose about something. I just don't know what they're talking about.
I'll be there for you, like I'll be there for you, like I'm trying to find you, even though you weren't particularly interested in coming back to me, I guess. Or at least
Also, what did Harry do to himself? How did he like cut himself or whatever that was that made him drop that thing?
I hate this.
It's just so convenient. Like he's just hanging out and then he like I don't know, like
We're very much playing Harry like we've already seen that goblin before.
yeah. And just like I just he the whole lead up to this is so contrived. He's just hanging around. He like pricks himself in the neck. He drops the thing on the glass, and that's all it needed to activate thing. Just randomly drop this square on the glass.
Yeah, you'd figure his father would actually tell him how to use that.
Yeah, unless he was just really being a cruel, vindictive jerk. Just like figure it out for yourself. I do like this though. I like that this is a Peter who, like, when he encounters a bad guy and the bad guy, like, had stuff that he wasn't prepared for, he, like experiments and he upgrades his webs and his suit and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially because for all intents and purposes, he beat Electro and doesn't think he'll ever deal with him again.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that he's still like upgrading his webbing to deal with that regardless.
Yeah, it adds more to him being like a genuinely smart person. Not just good with technology, like he's a thinker. I'm not even gonna question the physics of how that happened. It was just funny.
Yeah, one of the few more slapsticky moments that we've done in the Spider-Man movie that actually is funny.
Yeah. Well, just to check with you, there's not too much background noise from my end for you, is there? Because it just started raining again.
No, not that I can hear.
Okay, cool.
There was a moment from this scene in the trailers that was cut out of this movie conspicuously.
Was it the isn't that the question of the day thing?
Yeah, like he's being followed by Oscorp. Or that they
Yeah.
had him under surveillance. Yeah, that exchange is not in this movie for reasons.
And immediately, like, I feel bad, but like right here, we're just Harry's gonna go off the rails as a character. Where it's like, he's making a lot of assumptions right now. Like, how do you know for sure that Spider-Man's got the exact self-healing properties that you need? How do you know for sure that Peter isn't just like Peter says, like, I don't know him personally. That could very well be true. There's no reason to assume that they have a personal relationship. Or even that, like, Spider-Man would listen to Peter if Peter got to, I don't know.
Especially because he says, like it looks like he says he took that picture with a long lens, and it really looks like that's what he did.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a photo that only Spider-Man could have taken, or only a photo that someone who's close to Spider-Man could have gotten.
Yeah, like, tell me where he is. Like, how do you know he knows where he is? How do you know anyone knows that he lives anywhere, period? That you're making a lot of you're connecting a lot of dots that don't necessarily go together right now, Harry.
I'm not in love with how Peter's handling this situation either, though, because, um, like, okay, you're not gonna give him your DNA or even tell him that you're Spider-Man, which is fine, but like, you're not gonna try to actually help him look into his predicament at all.
Yeah. Like we were just talking about, you're a smart guy. You could contribute to helping him find a thing. Like, partner up the way your dads did. Why not?
But he's not even offering to do that.
Yeah, that never occurred to me. That's a real problem. Like, he doesn't even have to bring in the Spider-Man side of things to help out. You just try to help out. Like, maybe the reason that doesn't occur to me is because I, the audience, know that it's ridiculous that Harry is as worked up as he is, because he should have several decades left to fix this, but Peter doesn't know that. Still, though, for as ridiculous as all the assumptions that he made were, that wasn't the bad scene just for their relationship.
No, it just kind of throws both characters a little too under the bus for me.
Yeah. Like, you know, you mentioned You mentioned the Electro fight being a turning point. I do feel like it was a turning point just for the movie in general, where I feel like starting around now, the movie quickly starts to like squander the good aspects of it, where I could see living in another like world where you take the first half of this movie and then give it a completely different second half that builds on it better and people like it way more. It would still have its problems, but I think a lot of people's issues with this movie really solidify in this second back half.
Yeah. And weirdly enough, like Peter and Gwen don't actually spend a lot of time like together, like still in a relationship in this movie, ostensibly.
And
But
yet,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, they don't, and yet it almost never even occurs to you to think about it like that, just because again, their chemistry is just at a 10 every time they're together. It doesn't even occur to you that they're like not together.
But yet I'm still invested in the relationship, and I'm not really against the idea of killing her at the end of this movie.
Me either. A lot of people take issue with that, just like doing that at the end of this one. I don't have that. I feel like of all the issues that this movie has and of all the things that it tries to do that it does not earn, like that I don't think feels too unearned. I like this whole routine he does too. I love this. And like that little smile she gives. This is ridiculous, but it's great.
The heel tap he does here. Oh, that's great. I this, this I hate this. This is way too convenient.
Yeah.
This is just so he can know what what his girlfriend will look like, so that he can put it together in a scene where he's going to show up and then kill her.
Yeah. It's really forced.
That's literally all this interaction is here for.
Which is a shame because it you could definitely do ways to have them interact where it would make more sense. Like Peter was just talking to her about his whole predicament. Like, why don't the three of them have a scene together? Like that would even add to like the tragedy of like the three of them being so like them fighting over her in the climax. It's like to build a relationship not just between like pairs, but between the three of them. Why not? Maybe they don't want to crib too much from Spectacular. I don't know.
I wouldn't fault him for that at all.
Oh boy. I keep forgetting about this guy. This guy is ridiculous. See, just like you're right, we're completely in cartoon land with this movie, and I suppose now we're just all in it because this guy is just a ridiculous cartoon mad scientist.
I think that's Quinn from Badlands.
Huh. His name is literally Kafka. I can't get over how textbook evil he is.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that's the guy who plays Quinn in Into the Badlands.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see it. It took me a while without the beard, but yeah. I guess he just really likes playing over-the-top, cartoonishly evil guys.
He's been genuine pathos in that show. Here, not so much.
Well, I mean, here, he's only in, like, this scene and then another scene later, right?
Yeah, that's true. But he is a bona fide cartoon character for the amount of time that he's here.
Hmm.
I hate this scene so much. Like this is one of the biggest scenes that people go to for the Batman and Robin comparison.
Huh. How elaborate?
I just mean in tone and how goofy the dialogue is, and
Yeah.
this whole speech he's giving.
Yeah, this whole thing, this, again, just like making a whole, just making the biggest leaps, where it's like a world without mercy, a world without Spider-Man. It's like, wait, what?
Oh, that's horrendous. That might be the worst thing in the worst line in the whole movie. Don't you know? I'm Electro. That might be the worst line in the entire movie. It's so
See,
bad.
just like everything about this scene is like so odd. Where one, yes, that line. Two, the whole big jump he makes of like, oh, well, you know what'll make everybody in the city feel bad like I feel bad? Killing Spider-Man. And also just he spends that whole scene like beefing himself up and trying to make himself seem real intimidating. And then what he accomplishes at the end is he like slightly chips a guy's glasses. Like, does the scene want the audience to find him intimidating now or not? Because it's not doing a good job.
Nope, the complete opposite, actually. I love this scene so much. This is the main reason I feel like the parent stuff is somewhat justified because of the tension that we get between Aunt May and Peter.
Yeah. And like, see, it's so weird because like this is why I say it would almost even be better or simpler if this and number three were just straight up garbage movies. Because we go from a straight up garbage scene to like a really, really good scene with genuine pathos and genuine great acting from both of the performers involved. And I care about both of these characters. And it just makes me wonder, you had a good, potentially even great movie like buried in here, and you buried it under all of this nonsense.
And I love Aunt May here. She's like, no, you're my son. You're my son. I raised you. Your parents weren't there. Me and Ben were.
And I like that whole thing where she's like your stupid non-scientific aunt. Like I like that as an added wrinkle.
She
Not
feels a
just
little inadequate because she's not his biological parent. She doesn't have that innate, like, she's not the super science smart, like, type of person that his dad was. That
yeah,
he clearly still remembers.
and his mom. Like we get the indication that his mom was pretty involved in that too, and it's just like
And that's who he is. That
yeah,
certainly rubbed off on them. And maybe that's just inherent in the fact that he's their child.
yeah, and it needn't even be a biology thing. Like it is partially that, but it's also just she can't share his interests. She doesn't share his talent. Like they live in two different worlds, and she can't help it. And it's not his fault, but it constantly eats away at her. And like this scene is so good. Why couldn't it have been in a better movie?
And it's the main reason why I like you can't say like maybe you can call this a bad movie on the whole. I think I certainly would. But at the end of the day, it's not like there's no good here. This scene is beautiful.
Yeah, no.
And it's the kind of scene that I wish that we had. Like there's scenes like this in this movie And then there's scenes like the one in Spider-Man 2 where Peter like confesses to Aunt May that it's more or less his fault that Uncle Ben was murdered. And then we don't have, well, I mean, there's a scene in Homecoming that's fairly strong where she tries to reassure him after Tony takes his suit away.
Yeah, but
We don't really have a strong Aunt May and Peter Parker scene in any of the MCU films yet.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
And I love that Peter reassures her, like, it's not about that. Like, I love you. Like, I know that you raised me. Like, I'm aware of all that stuff. But they're my parents, and I need to know.
Yeah. Like, it's not about her. And that's, in a way, a thing that makes them both, like, flawed human characters in a way, where he doesn't realize initially up until this scene what his fixation on his parents is doing to her, but she also has a little bit of a hang up that she needs to get over just in realizing that it's not about her to him. It's not about dismissing her. It's not about not valuing her enough. It's about just he should know these things. But that said, I will say one part of that scene that is pretty forced is that she just coincidentally happens to mention the D train, and that's going to lead to the whole train thing.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is stacked upon convenience after convenience moving the plot forward.
Speaking of which, Harry's already got like lesions, and he's like on the brink of death right now. It's been like 2 days. What happened?
He's not actually taking advantage of any of the resources he's given. He's just trying to fix this right now.
He's just lying around, like basically giving up. Like he's just waiting for Spider-Man to save him. It's like, dude, how are you this bad already?
This is just the movie wanting to rush to get us to a certain point. That's another thing about this movie. It feels rushed, and at the same time, you can feel the scenes. You can tell there are scenes missing.
Yeah. And like, I also think Peter makes a big mistake just leaving and not finishing this conversation properly, where he's like, we don't know what this could do to you. It's like,
And he's not really offering him an alternative.
but like, that's not even what I'm thinking. Like, Harry doesn't listen to that. I want him to like go, no, I'm serious. The last time
This is so cartoony. You're a fraud, Spider-Man.
He's like throwing a tantrum. But yeah, like, I want Peter to like go, no, I'm serious. The last time something similar to this happened, it turned someone into a giant lizard monster. And Harry's like, your blood can't make me die more. How do you know that? How do you know that it can't make you die more? It could kill you instantly. We don't know.
Maybe this is not the time to vent to your ex-girlfriend.
He has no idea what's going on. It's terrible, but like, he's having a manic episode and he's just not paying attention to anything.
Oh, you can see that he's now finally putting it together what she's there for.
He like didn't. He's looking around the whole room. He did not process where they are at all. You should just leave. You should just leave.
Yeah, I imagine we'll talk about the scene a little later when we get to it. But I love that not only does he leave her the message like made in webs, he also says, you know what, screw it, I'll go with you. I'll just be Spider-Man in Europe. Think about crime there, why not?
Yeah, they've got like giant elemental monsters and everything.
That's in another dimension
Yeah.
that we didn't actually do, which was awesome.
Save it. Save the conversation for later. Gwen, you don't want to think about this right now. You've got an interview to do. Not the time. Ay, ay, ay. Having gone through university interviews and stuff, or just like job interviews or any kind of interview, it's like, oh no, stop. You don't know.
Yeah,
Not
stuff
the
like
time
that
or
makes it
place.
much less likely for you to get the position before you even walk in the room.
Yeah. Like I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the interview lady who must have spent that whole scene going like, I don't know if I want someone who's like got all this baggage. Like, should I leave? Should I leave the room and let you two hash things out?
Yeah, yeah. This I hate this. So we just if you didn't throw it at the wall, never would have found these tokens he needed.
Why would you put those there?
And why wouldn't you leave any kind of indication to Peter he needs to open that calculator? Like he doesn't leave any kind of type of clue about the calculators. So if he didn't break these, we wouldn't really have a movie.
Ah, I hate stuff like this.
Yeah.
I hate stuff that like without any setup just happens in like the blink of an eye, because then it makes the whole plot feel really lazy because it's like, oh well, if I turn my head for like 5 seconds, I'm gonna be wondering how he even got to looking at trains. Or like if I missed the one coincidental line of dialogue from Aunt May because I was maybe thinking about the rest of that scene or whatever, then just this stuff should be properly, efficiently set up in ways that make it, important and not just we're here now. Oh right, Felicia's still in the movie. I forgot.
Didn't you remember she had another scene in this film because of how wasteful they use her? I can't even say they use her because this could have been anyone. They don't do anything with her.
You know what I feel like? I feel like their little get out of jail free card, their little cheat is that we don't call her Felicia Hardy.
Set up. A little later.
Well, also that, but we don't say Hardy. Like she's just Felicia. You don't know she's Felicia Hardy. Maybe
That's
we.
really cutesy and disingenuous. Like, if you're not gonna make her the comic character, don't give her that name.
Yeah. Again, you get the feeling that they do stuff like that just as a failsafe for like if/when this movie doesn't do well or doesn't end up getting the sequels that we want it to have, we can say she wasn't sequel bait. She was just a totally random person who happened to be named after a comic book character. So ha 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 ha.
Um, given the the critical reception of Joker, I think it's well. I always thought just it was an inherently weird kind of counterintuitive notion to focus a whole movie on an antagonist from a superhero's rogues gallery. Um, and so this idea of building to not only doing Sinister Six, but doing a Sinister Six standalone movie that we didn't even know for sure would have Spider-Man in it or not felt really weird.
That makes zero sense to me. Like, Joker, fine, whatever. I still don't like it there, but fine. We've decided we're gonna take the origin thing of like, how does a normal, quote unquote, normal guy become the Joker? Fine, there's a movie in there. What do you do with the Sinister Six without Spider-Man? Like, what are they gonna do for a movie?
That's a great question. And if Spider-Man's going to be in that film, why not just make it a Spider-Man movie? Like, why do we have to focus a movie around a bunch of villains? There's no inherently interesting concept there that warrants just making them their own thing. Like, they're not Suicide Squad.
Why is this guy? This dude is such a two-dimensionally evil jerk too. Like he's really eager to just send Harry off to his death for no real reason. And like, how did he even get control of the company anyway? What exactly happened?
He basically more or less set up Harry, I think.
I'm pretty sure that doesn't give you grounds to kick him out of the building like the day of, though. I don't know about that.
But again, all of this is just a means to an end. All
Yeah.
of this is just to force him into that Goblin suit so that he can go off and kill Gwen.
And I feel bad, but like I mentioned this in the review, this whole scene is where I just tune out, partially just because the guy playing Richard Parker has a real, and so he's just gonna exposition dump all over the place, and
I
I
mean,
just do not care to listen to any of it.
I don't really have that or agree with that at all. I do think um, the main issue with this scene is more or less just it's anticlimactic and the weird destiny thing. That's
Those
more
are
of the scene
those are
because
definitely problems. Also, yes.
like I'm not deeply moved or satisfied by this revelation. Like it's about as generic and surface as I would have expected they would do.
Yeah, and we've built up to it so much. Like we built so much of this movie about getting here, and it's kind of nothing.
Yes, because and, I'm gonna be a broken record about this. They should have known what this was going in.
Hmm.
This is not this isn't something you can just make up on the fly. You're building to this.
And again, if you took a break in this movie, said, all right, let's address this in number 3 or 4 or something, where we can come up with an idea that's, satisfying, like, don't force yourself to resolve this here if you don't have a good resolution yet.
And the main reason as I said before, we already got the scene, but the main reason that I'm not completely gawking at all the parent stuff is because of that great scene that we get with May and Peter. Outside of that, all this parent stuff by the end doesn't really justify its own existence at all.
You could argue it, honestly.
Yeah, the only reason we do that is so that we can look like we're going a different enough way from the Raimi film. That's the
Like,
only reason they decided to do it in the first place.
honestly, I've never had that watching this movie before, but I'm having it now. Minus the Aunt May scene, you could straight up cut any and every mention of the parents, and the rest of the movie would not have to change a bit. This movie's how long? Like, almost 2.5 hours. You could get this to like a clean 2 hours just by excising all of the parental stuff, and you wouldn't miss anything but the Aunt May bit.
Which is one of the strongest scenes in the movie. I don't know if I want to lose it.
True. Harry is taking after MJ in the stealth missions.
From PS4. I just put that together yet. Which are most people's major complaint with that. I mean, with that game.
Hmm. Oh god, his accent. It's so much. dude, like Harry is just like so visually falling apart. Like, why couldn't we have devoted like a scene, a line of dialogue, anything to why he's degenerating this quickly? Just justify it somehow.
Yeah, that doesn't really seem like they're interested in doing it.
It'd take them 10 seconds and it would fix his whole character.
I don't know if it fixes his whole character. There's no real reason for him to be accelerating when his dad wasn't, and they both had the exact same amount of resources.
Yeah, but you
Both
could like make one up. You could say like generationally it gets worse so that like what worked for me isn't going to work for you. Something like that. I don't know, anything. Like it's a made up disease to begin with. You could just do something. Like take 10 seconds out of your movie to justify your villain's motivation.
Andrew sold that whole scene way better than it deserves to be.
Yeah. Villain team up.
And this is another really hammy, like Schumacher Batman esque scene when Harry's being pulled away by the guards, and he's like, "I need you, Max! I need you!"
Which I mean, like, it would make sense if Harry had any reason to know that that was exactly the kind of thing Max needed to hear, but he doesn't. So he's just saying it to say it.
Yeah, if he was aware of like Max's kind of psychosis and like his need to be seen and be acknowledged, that works. It makes sense. It's still incredibly goofy.
Hmm.
And it's such a shame. Like this is the movie of the two I obviously have the hardest time coming back to, and it feels like a dagger being dug in my back having to talk about this movie because like the good is so like the good is so few and far between, and the bad just outweighs it so hard that like I'm unfortunately forced to be way more negative than I would like to. We just don't have a good movie here.
Yeah. And again, I feel even more strongly as we go along that like it's this second half that really kills it. And like you could argue that's the case with a lot of movies that we end up deeming outright bad. Like stuff that starts not great and then slowly gets better as the movie progresses, we tend to be kinder towards, as opposed to stuff that starts out not terrible and then slowly gets worse.
I kind of had that with my first viewing of Far From Home, where I wasn't in love with the first act of that movie, and I was kind of like impatiently tapping my foot, waiting for us to get to the actual Spider-Man stuff, and I could have done without a lot of the slapstick jokes that just weren't playing for me. But the second half of that movie is amazing.
Yeah. And like we'll get into it more with that movie where I feel like a lot of people have that to varying degrees. But here it's unfortunately the opposite, where it's like we open with a lot of not terrible Spider-Man stuff and a lot of questionable but ultimately compelling relationship stuff. And here we are just with these two goofballs like electroshocking this crazy scientist man.
Let's Go Catch a Spider is maybe okay.
It's
That's not as goofy as I would expect it to be.
it's pretty generic.
Yeah.
This from Gwen isn't bad.
I remember you saying she sounds unofficially callous through this voice recording.
Hmm. I don't know. It's been a while since I checked out that review, which is, to my knowledge, I'm working on it, but the only one of the Spider-Man-a-thon that I think is still not available for viewing since it got blocked. I'll have to fix that. But I don't know.
Part of me feels like Gwen wouldn't do that over the phone.
Yeah, that was my problem with it.
This Gwen would kind of find out where he is and confront him and do it face to face.
Yeah, that's that I okay. I remember now. That was what my problem with it was. It's like if you're gonna like firmly like decide, all right, it's time for us to just stop being together, stop being friends. We're going separate ways. All right, doing that over the phone is pretty. Even if the sentiment is nice enough. Buddy, he just who did he not just? What did you think was gonna happen?
I mean, I'm not. It's not going to win an award or anything, but I like that we finally have him in costume.
Yeah, this is kind of the last gasp of us doing black generic rubber costumes. That
And to be fair, um, well, honestly, this movie kind of doesn't get away with that since we were able to get away from the straight up goofy Steve Ditko starfish mask thing, but we also gave him those colors and made him look really cool in the PS4 game.
yeah. Even though I do still think the PS4 game suit is a little too busy, maybe. I don't know. I feel like Electro's kind of gotten the short end of the stick in general as far as costumes go. I can't think of a single really, truly great looking Electro costume, I don't think.
I mean, I don't agree that it's too busy. It's supposed to um, like siphon and work with the electricity he gives off.
It makes sense that it looks the way it does. It just, speaking purely aesthetically.
And you're
Welcome to welcome to the sequel bait room.
yeah, Arachnus oscorpus or whatever that says. My God, that's horrendous. Yeah, it feels like Joel Schumacher had like an executive producer credit on this movie and was like, we should make it feel more fun, everyone. Make it feel more fun for the kids.
I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. Batman and Robin is kind of more fun than this movie as far as just the pure campy, goofy nonsense of it all.
But this movie is still really goofy.
Yeah, like maybe they almost don't go far enough with it. Maybe we should have had Joel Schumacher on the set going like, remember everyone, this is a cartoon. Like if you make this whole movie a cartoon, then maybe it like swings all the way in the other direction and becomes a really fun, really compelling, goofy cartoon to watch. As opposed to here, where we've got a bunch of weird, goofy cartoon moments trapped inside of this movie that's otherwise trying to be a genuine story and stuff.
And it feels so weird to do this with the tone of the entire last movie you had.
We also don't have nearly enough homoeroticism to justify Joel Schumacher. So we could have used more of that, I guess. It would appeal to somebody, I'm sure. What was that weird? His like back is doing weird stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'll also say this is a part of the score that I don't mind.
It works really well for this scene, yeah. He looks horrendous though.
Like the fact that that stuff just happened to him in like 5 seconds. It's like, oh, well, Harry, I wonder why we told you not to take Spider-Man's blood. I wonder why we maybe suggested that wouldn't have been a good idea. And now it turns out Peter was right, so... And you're going to get mad at him anyway, even though he's the one who told you not to do this.
That feels very New York. I mean, maybe you should speak to that more than I should, but the fact that she's like, stop the cab, and she's like, later, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that she's wearing the outfit she was wearing in that comic where she dies.
Mm-hmm. Although, to be fair, every outfit that she has worn across both of these movies, she is absolutely rocked. Like,
Yeah.
award for most stylish love interest goes to Gwen Stacy. Most fashion sense in a superhero movie.
This is the scene where he does the suggestion where it's like, yeah, I'll just go with you. I'll go to Europe. Spider-Man can just hang out in Europe. Same people there. I don't know how I feel about us calling back to the stalking thing because it's already a weird thing. I don't even feel the need to talk all that much about. And then he's like, I'll follow you anywhere.
The movie insists that we talk about it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, maybe we should have cut that one.
Spider-Man versus Jack the Ripper. Make it happen.
And I think like it does feel out of character for her to even try to do that over the phone in the first place. So the fact that she's like so on board and takes him back here, surprisingly, I think it works, and I'm not questioning it because that feels like a decision that she isn't really comfortable with making.
Yeah. You think maybe she's like sort of forcing herself to do it just because it's getting too complicated.
Yeah, she can't bring herself to do it in person. So, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, if she really felt that way, she would have done it in person.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, this is a subplot to try to raise the stakes. Like these two planes are going to crash into each other because Electro took out the power grid. And
unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, are the stakes not high enough already? I think a whole city going without power is enough, you guys.
Well, there needs to be like immediate lives put in danger. Is their thing.
But does there though? Does there?
I mean that as opposed to a bunch of people, I guess, just dying of starvation and dehydration because nothing that helps them produce food and water works.
I mean, I get it. You need stakes that are immediate sometimes, but I don't think that has to be the case with everything. Like, a guy is doing stuff that's going to cause problems long term. That still has to get fixed. We don't have to send two planes towards each other to know that Spider-Man has to stop Electro.
Maybe this would be rewriting. No, this is definitely writing the movie, and Gwen probably would not die. Or if she did, it would be in a significantly different way. But if they wanted to keep the plane thing, maybe Gwen actually makes it to the plane before Peter can put that message out. Or maybe tragically, she sees it. She's already gotten on the plane. She's flying over the city and she sees it. Mm-hmm. But Peter somehow knows about those planes. And so that adds to the stakes of like, okay, Gwen is on one of those planes. If they crash, then she's dead.
We talked over it, but I like that whole bit between them and like the police. Like it starts with the police guy, with the megaphone, like Spider-Man, and it like blows out his ears, and then like last ditch effort. She's like, "I'm coming with you." He's like, "Yeah, you're coming with me." I grab the thing, Like he tricks her into putting her hand on the thing, and like that was I like that whole interaction.
Yeah, I think that was the stinger from one of the trailers. It's a really fun little scene.
And if I recall correctly, her shouting Peter and like throwing her hand over her mouth is not in the script.
That's a really good improv by Emma Stone if that's the case.
Yeah, like if I remember correctly, like she didn't even mean to do it. Like it wasn't like a plan or anything. She just ended up screaming that unprompted when he left. Like that was a genuine mistake on
The
her
swinging
part.
is really well handled. I like that he climbs up the web to gain more momentum as he swings. That's really cool.
Yeah, we don't do that like hardly ever. I don't think.
Yeah, that's something unique to this movie. We don't really have like an actual swing scene in Homecoming. We get one at the end of Far From Home, but it's nothing like that.
Although I do think the swinging that we do get in Far From Home, like throughout that movie, is really really good.
Oh yeah. Oh, classic pose.
Yes. Kaboom! Kapow! Explosions.
A guy named Sparkles. Yeah, I feel like Andrew. He's embodying this role perfectly. I
Yeah.
don't.
Of all the things that we've had to complain about across this movie, it's a good thing at least that almost none of it has been like in costume stuff. All of the stuff of him in costume.
He feels like a Mortal Kombat character. Just bah!
Not a comparison I ever would have thought of, but surprisingly accurate.
That's hysterical. Um, and somehow Peter is completely unscathed by that. But yeah, that was really funny.
Ooh.
Maybe the most unintentionally funny moment of the whole movie. And I did not pick up on the itsy bitsy spider thing that he was doing here. My first watch through of this movie.
Me either. When he's like, "Oh, I hate this song," I'm like, "Wait, what are you talking about? What is he even doing?"
And that is the drawback to doing the whole dubstep and electro. When you try to do a full song, but it's like a dubstep remix, it's not inherently recognizable.
Yeah.
What are you, a caveman?
And like, see, especially in retrospect, there's this like really complicated mix of emotions in bits like this where it's like, again, it's funny, but it's also tense because you know what's going to happen, and yet you agree with Gwen that she should be able to make her own choices, and you just like the idea of the two of them working together to stop the villain. Like they're a good team, and yet you shouldn't want this to happen, but you do, and it's really complicated.
Um, Especially because, like, I mean, you can make the argument: does he really need her since he was able to beat her on his own the first time?
But circumstances have admittedly changed, and he's kind of got the home field advantage.
That is true. This is the only shot that feels kind of like Raimi to me.
could maybe see that.
Yeah, like the burned, fried hand holding the keys.
Mm, mm, mm.
It would be nice if Peter actually even knew about this. So the
Yeah,
things that they want the movie to, like that they want that to have, don't. They're not really there because Peter has no clue that's even going on.
I mean, again, I feel like a couple of the things this movie does are solely for the audience, which I mean, I suppose whatever, but yeah, your protagonist should maybe know what the stakes of their action sequence are. Yeah, like I like Electro's theme. I think it's a pretty solid piece of the score in a movie with a mostly otherwise unremarkable score, unfortunately.
I wouldn't call it unremarkable so much as unmemorable.
Yeah, that's maybe more appropriate.
Like I want to say, like a score from a comic movie that I found was particularly just like mediocre and not good was Suicide Squad.
I
Just the
forgot.
few, just the few bits of actual like original score they made for that movie were not great, and the rest were just thrown in random either pop songs or popular songs.
This is the second or third time that we've poo-pooed on Suicide Squad in this commentary. Do I feel bad? Not even a little bit.
Nope.
I forgot that that movie had a score, if I'm being honest. Yay! The day is saved thanks to the Spider-Man.
But we still need to kill Gwen, so the movie's not over yet.
Oh.
And as much as I hate how contrived and forced the events are that get us here, um, and how much I hate what Harry looks like as Goblin, the actual fight between them is pretty well done.
Yeah, it's not intense. I just, wish we'd earned it even remotely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know he's supposed to look bad, but he looks bad and not in a good way.
Your incredibly audible disgust is hilarious to me.
Yes, I was discussing theater in not a good way. Like,
Dude, your hair is so stupid. Like, the hair especially gets to me. Like,
he reminds me of those plush toys that have the
the,
weird
tro- the
spike.
troll dolls.
Yeah,
Like, man, what? And I guess spider blood ruins your teeth? I don't.
she looks horrendous. I would have been fine with another Power Rangers mask over
Honestly, a mask of any kind would be better than like trying to warp his face into goblin features and then not even going all the way with it. Like you
Yeah,
stopped halfway.
I like this. His webs are limited, and so he can't just. He's just too far up for him to get to her.
Yeah. And see, like, if you don't know that the death of Gwen Stacy is coming, if you're just like a casual movie going audience member, then I can totally see like not quite having that sense of dread. Like you think this is just the climactic action sequence and everything's gonna be okay afterward.
which was interesting seeing this in the theater for the first time with an audience that clearly knew nothing about comics or particularly Spider-Man and was not aware of the birth of Gwen Stacy. Because when it happens, my audience was so shook. It was weird because I kind of got the feeling that a lot, like, they were not genuinely invested in what was going on in this movie until we got to the end in this scene where Gwen finally dies, and it's like they were invested and they cared suddenly. It was kind of weird. Like, it was almost Thanos snap. Like, it was that insane how the theater reacted to her dying.
Although, to what degree is that necessarily being invested in the story, and to what degree is that just never expecting the love interest to die in one of these movies?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, but maybe more so the second thing.
Really, though, this is a good fight.
Oh yeah, and like Peter's using his webs very cleverly here.
Mm.
I always appreciate that. But I will say, this thing we're about to do with the webs here is kind of really cutesy and dumb, and I can kind of understand why everyone hates it. When the tip of his web reaches out like a hand to try to catch her.
Yeah, that's pretty. Also, just I've been poo-pooing the score, but the score for that fight also wasn't bad. But yeah, the whole hand thing, I don't really feel any particular way about it.
I don't either, but I understand people's reaction to this shot. Yeah, this is really hammy and obvious. But I think it's important to note she dies a very different way here.
Yeah.
So in the comic, she's thrown off of, oh god, yeah.
The crap.
It's hard to watch every time. So in the comic, he catches her by the leg and she gets whiplash and her neck snaps bare. Yeah. That is how she dies in the comic. And she's thrown over a bridge. In this scene, she's falling in the clock tower, and Peter catches her by the stomach, but she doesn't die from her neck cracking. The back of her head smacks the pavement or the ground.
And like, I know
she dies from blunt force trauma to the head.
Yeah. And I know a channel that made a comparison between the two death scenes, and like how it's a little bit more of an ironic twist in the comics, where for like a couple panels, Peter's like, he has not even realized what's happened, and he's like congratulating himself, like, oh boy, I did it again, right in the nick of time. Ain't I great? Being Spider-Man is awesome. I get to save my girlfriend. And then, nope, turns out she's dead. Whereas here, it's like, as soon as it happens, just, ugh.
Yeah, people were so, like, mind blown by this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's difficult sometimes to take yourself out of the comic fan mindset. Where, like, to us, Gwen Stacy dying is just a thing that happens. For a while, it's what she's known for. It's like, it's inevitable. But if you're a casual member of the audience, that's a genuine twist. That is a bold move for a movie to make.
And I think so. Here's why I genuinely love the ending of this movie. I don't think a lot of the villains. Actually, I don't think really any of the villain stuff works on any level. But I love that we killed Gwen here, and I love where we have Peter by the end of this movie, because I think it's very important to have Spider-Man's a very different character from Batman, right? Like, Batman, he loses Rachel in Dark Knight, and he takes the hit for Harvey, and presumably he keeps fighting, but we get the sequel, and that's clearly not what he did. He clearly gave up right after that.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man, he doesn't do that. Like tragedy informs who he is, but it doesn't define who he is. And he will take his time and he will grieve, but he will get back on the horse and he will keep going and persevering and he will continue to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
There was a deleted scene where his dad shows up alive. I'm glad we cut that nonsense.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Like, how? How is that possible? He was in a crashing plane.
And with no parachute. There is no scenario you can in which you can convince me that a normal man in any way is capable of surviving that crash.
Unless this is Lost.
Yeah, that's
Meanwhile, more sequel bait because we haven't had enough of that yet.
and we're so confident everyone's gonna love this movie.
Or like, forget everyone loving it. Like, we're so confident that we're gonna keep getting to make these.
Yeah.
Also, okay, so Harry's back to normal?
Low battery.
Is he
Low
dying?
battery.
Is he not dying? What's happening? Can he just go back and forth from being a goblin person at will? Is he
Of course, this is our big blatant setup for Sinister Six. I was hoping, and honestly, I'm kind of still hoping that if we ever recast Doc Ock in MCU, Mark Hamill will get to play him. I think that would be so fun.
Mark Hamill is my choice. I know someone suggested doing what's his name? The guy in Stranger Things, the conspiracy guy.
I'm not sure who you mean. I know the only one I know by name from that show is the sheriff, and 11.
The one who lets Jonathan and Nancy like stay with him and then kicks him out when they're
I
done.
don't know. I don't know who that is.
Someone suggested him, and I don't think that would be a terrible choice, but I want Mark Hamill personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, the fact that we just leave Harry like just sitting around, pleased as punch with himself. Like, is he mentally more lucid now? Does the fact
Yeah.
that he just murdered an innocent girl have zero impact on him? Why is he not still desperate to cure himself?
Because I think the idea is that he more or less did, or at least that the suit is somehow doing that, or did that for him. I don't know. We're really vague, and at this point, we don't really care what's going on in our own script.
Yeah, we just completely forget to resolve on screen the feelings and motivation of one of our nominally major characters. That's the thing that movies do, right? Are we doing this? Are we doing this as like an intentional callback to the first movie of like ending on a message like this?
Maybe. It's certainly more. I don't know. The motif of starting with this speech and then ending with it feels more apt for this movie than it does for that first one, especially because we don't hear the voicemail at all until the end with the first one.
We hear the start.
Oh, the start of it, yeah. But conveniently, we don't hear the rest of it because the rest of it feels like Uncle Ben knew what was going to happen after his death.
Also, it makes sense because unlike last time, this is kind of the reverse of last time where I got the implication that Peter had heard the message already and the audience just wasn't privy to it until the end. Here, the audience hears the message first and Peter actually doesn't get to hear it until just now. Yeah, like I don't mind this. I can understand the people who think it's maybe a bit rushed.
What, him getting over Gwen, or
Just something about the presentation where it's a
well,
little bit like,
I love this is one of my favorite things about this whole movie is doing something as bold as killing Gwen, but he gets back on the saddle and continues being Spider.
yeah, I
I
like
think
it.
that's really important.
I like it. I just think maybe spend a couple of more minutes on it so that people aren't like, well, that was fast or whatever.
Well, we do a clear montage showing you the time has passed, and he has mourned her death.
Mm.
I don't think that. I think you're asking for too much at that point in a movie that's already had its third act.
I don't know. I'm trying to justify in my head like why people have an issue with that so much. Do you think is part of it just that we pivot from that to cartoon Rhino again?
Uh, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, this whole movie is so cartoony that I don't feel like that should ultimately matter.
Yeah.
It's not like we were more or less consistent with the tone of last movie, and then we get this cartoon again.
Also, minus mom points for being an unobservant mom. This is pretty neat though.
Yeah, like I said, the ending is arguably the best part of this movie.
Yeah.
Because he inspires this kid, and he, you know, decides to keep going, keep persevering. Because not only is that what Gwen would want, that's what Uncle Ben would want, and that's what he knows he should do. A lot of people, mainly Cap, continue to complain that the last shot of this movie was in the trailer.
I don't see why that's a big deal personally. Like I get it, you don't want if it's like a spoiler then fine, but this is like an innocuous thing. Like I guess Cap's point is that like
He
he
thought there was
spent
going to be stuff after that, like a whole action scene.
yeah, he spends like the whole movie looking forward to that because it was marketed to him. I guess that's a fair complaint. Like you don't want to like putting that in the trailer gives your audience like the promise of something to come, and if they don't get that, it's just what they saw in the trailer, the end. That's a little bit cheap.
Yeah. At the very least, I appreciate, at least with this movie, they more or less just showed us the whole movie as opposed to false marketing, which I don't like. Like that whole bit where he's fighting the robbers in Far From Home, not being in the theatrical cut of the movie at all.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was uh, a movie, or I guess it passes for one.
It was certainly a moving picture. Forgot that this
Can we
song
just
was in
stop
the
letting
credits.
Alex Kurtzman write things
Eh,
or be involved with anything that resembles a movie whatsoever?
harsh, but I can't necessarily disagree. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is bad, but part of the benefit of it just being ridiculously cartoony, kind of like lazy plotting bad, is that I'm not I'm not like disappointed slash angry with it in the ways that I can be at parts of Spider-Man 3. Where like Spider-Man 3 seemed seemed way more like it was caught between like doing stuff that it genuinely wanted to do and like genuine pathos and stuff, and then just a bunch of stuff that it was saddled with, and you can
Mhm.
tell that there's large parts of that movie that the movie itself is not interested in. Here it's just like it's more incompetent. They decided that they wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff and they just didn't end up doing any of it well, which is maybe worse, but to me personally it's less irritating.
So do you think? I mean, as much as I don't like this movie, I didn't feel like it was completely and totally unsalvageable. Do you feel like we should have got a third film?
I don't know if it's a question of should have. Like I feel like
Or
this
would you have liked to see one?
I wouldn't have minded. I definitely think they could have made a follow-up to this movie that was a genuinely good movie. I don't think anything happened in this movie that's like you can't move on from here, like why do I even care? Like people who really dislike Spider-Man 3 make that argument about it and I can kind of see that where it's like you kind of screwed the pooch so hard and like the characters are so sort of beyond repair at this point and just I don't have that with this one. With this one, it's like, yeah, honestly, we've resolved all the parent stuff. Harry is just in jail, I guess, or whatever. Norman's dead, so we don't have to tie up that loose end. You could make, quote unquote, The Amazing Spider Man 3 that's just a totally standalone, fun Spider Man adventure. Why not? I wouldn't trust these people to make it, but you could.
And it feels like, yeah, I would imagine if we got a third one, if they'd stuck with the trajectory they were going on, it would have more or less been Sinister Six. Like that movie would have been Sinister Six, and maybe we would have gotten essentially Sinister Six again, but we're just gonna call it Sinister Six as opposed to Amazing Spider-Man 4.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking like before we had gotten news that they weren't gonna be going forward with any of that ridiculous stuff, that Amazing Spider-Man 3 would be more or less another setup film, and then we would finally get Sinister Six, but that would ostensibly be a Spider-Man movie with him fighting those characters, as opposed to trying to tell a central story focusing around them and not include him.
Which again, I don't even understand on a conceptual level what that looks like. Like, explain to me what that movie is. I don't think you can.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're not Suicide Squad. They're not built to be a. They have one purpose: to take down Spider-Man.
Yeah. But that's a story for another day, assuming that we ever actually get Sinister Six even alluded to in a movie that's not just pure sequel bait. But that aside, this has been a movie, as has previously been said. Let us know what you think about it in the comments. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any particular points of our commentary. And next up is Homecoming. So that should be hopefully less of a rant fest.
Yeah.